My dear friends, my dear viewers, my dear subscribers, let me introduce Keith Ferrazzi. Today our guest is Keith Ferrazzi, who is the fantastic person, wonderful researcher and thinker, very innovative, very creative in his entrepreneurship. And what's more, he even added a new word. I wonder whether in Webster Dictionary it's there or in Oxford Dictionary, called co-elevation. We're going to talk about that. But Keith is a CEO of Ferrazzi Ferrazzi Greenlight, a research company, research and consulting company. At the same time, within that company, there is a research institute on future of work. And that's what most of us really are concerned about. You know, what will happen with work in the future, especially if the coronavirus are going to be with us, as some people say, for years to come. Now, since our time is really limited, and a lot of people know you, Keith, as the guru in network. I mean, your book called Never Eat Alone is a Bible, and I think it's the best book ever written on network, on power of how to make somebody's life more efficient. Not just like you scratch my back and I scratch yours, but being a genuine really helper to artists and how you can skyrocket your career and make your life fantastic. And in fact, when you wrote that book, you were using your own example, and that's, you know, gives additional value to the book. Now you've written another book, which is called Leading Without Authority. And that's something which I found, again, fascinating, because it looks like a completely different topic. It's like one actor in the theater. He does one role well, and they say his amplitude is the hero. And it's very, very difficult to move from that. So I think you have some task now. You have to move from being just guru networking and move into leadership. But at the same time, I think our previous discussion tells me that there is a lot of correlations between that. So, future of work, how we can work better together. So, how we can work better together, how we can be more efficient, happy, more productive, to bring growth to the company, you know, to increase shareholders' value and make ourselves more really, how can I say, realize our full potential.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's so wonderful to see you again. The last time we actually broke bread together was in Kyiv, and now we're here remotely, and I'm excited to spend some time with you. You know, the last 5 or 6 months has been perhaps the most disruptive time that any of us have ever experienced. People crumble in the face of this type of adversity, and others marshal together to achieve extraordinary things. And I can say that I'm very impressed by the human condition in crisis. I have seen organizations that have reduced their revenues by 90% and have come out of the peak of the crisis stronger than they were before. And they have found new revenue growth opportunities. They have avoided additional risk. And the only way they would have done that is if they recognize that they are not a set of individuals. A team can no longer be a set of individuals reporting to a leader. A team has to become an interdependent group committed to each other's success and committed to a mission. What I'd like to walk through today is a challenge that I give organizations. I say that now is the time not to be excited and hopeful to go back to work. Now is the time to go forward to work. And going forward to work means marshaling a team of individuals, which I would even like to redefine what team means. A team of individuals is a group of people who could achieve extraordinary things. I don't even care about org charts. I don't care about the boundaries of whether somebody's in your company or in another company. In a remote world that we're living in today, we can invite anybody into our team. Anybody who needs to be a part of the solution is a part of your team. If your mindset is leading to achieve extraordinary things with extraordinary people, that's the mindset that we need. And I call it the mindset of co-elevation. A group of people going higher, co-elevating together. A group of committed people to a mission, but also to each other. And I have seen that create entirely new companies in the last few months. I've seen that belief system take organizations that were going to be in bankruptcy and turn them around and help them thrive. I have seen new markets created. I have seen organizations weather incredible storms. So I would like to bring this methodology to the people in your region. And we're already doing so. I'm working with a real estate company in your region, actually, that is, of course, real estate for quite a while just collapsed. But we brought together in a remote basis, and I was here in Los Angeles and they were in your region. We brought together all of the sales reps in this real estate company. We organized them into small co-elevating teams of 4. And those teams of 4 committed to coaching each other on ideas how to keep the connection with the customer strong during this time. Then they focused on how to redesign their apartments, their product. How do they redesign their apartments to make them more safe and give people a sense of security to buy these apartments? How do they market their apartments? They rethought everything. And in a series of discussions, they rethought their entire business. And actually this year, instead of the rest of the companies in that region, which have gone significantly down, they're 10% up for the year. So other organizations have failed, have gone bankrupt, and have reduced, the standard revenue was reduced by 50%. They've gone 10% up, and they've got a stronger business for 2021.
May I please ask you? I mean, it's really interesting. So basically, I think it would be great for myself, including my viewers, to have a distinguished kind of what are the difference between cooperation and co-elevation? Because basically, cooperation seems to be like a known word, and we know what does it mean, right?
Yes.
Co-elevation is slightly different.
So collaboration is when, let me give you a spectrum and how it normally works. An individual has a job to do and they get it done until they can't. Once they figure out they don't have the resources, or they figure out they have to get somebody else's permission, the default is to collaborate. Mm-hmm. So the mindset is that I can do my job by myself and I'm going to go collaborate when I need to get to the next level. Co-elevation believes that I will never figure out my business and the next level at a level of exponential, at a level of abundance, at a level of breakthrough, at a level of innovation, at a level that is 10x, not 10%. I mean, what I've seen is a human can achieve 10x with the same time that it takes them to achieve 10% if they adopt a co-elevation philosophy. Because the first question is, who is my team to strategize the answers to breaking through? If you figure the answer out yourself, you're only going to be bringing the information that you know. You're going to be bringing the traditions that you have, the habits that you have. All of that will go into the next decision. We call it teaming out. Teaming out. If you decide that you're going to team out and you're going to invite a team in that will disrupt your thinking, challenge your mind, lend new ideas. If you approach the planning process, the strategy process, the early part of design of what you're going to achieve with a broader perspective, a more inclusive perspective, you can break through. Your business has been has been decimated. The speaking business has been decimated.
Right.
But if you and I and two other individuals team up to come up with a new business model, I promise you we would create a new business model better than any one of us could. Right? And I've done this. I have now reached out to individuals in my position who own professional services organizations, consulting organizations, who make their income through speaking and other things. And I have begun to organize with them new business models, understand as a collective, we can experiment. Four of us can experiment in ways that we could never experiment as individuals, right? So the first step of co-elevation is a more inclusive mindset to break through new ideas. The second stage is, as I mentioned, most people in collaboration slip into it only when they have to, and then they go back to coexistence. Mm-hmm. In larger organizations, people live in coexistence. That's why they talk about silos in organizations that don't work together. Well, in a co-elevating mindset, we're taking one of the largest airlines in the world and organizing it around co-elevation. And in the past, they would have the marketing department, the sales department, the customer service department, et cetera. But what we're doing is we're organizing the company around work. What are the big new hills, we call them hills, that the organization has to take? What are the 6 major areas that we have to approach? And then for each of those, instead of putting an owner, we're actually, do you know what a Sherpa is? Somebody who helps somebody climb a mountain?
Right, yes, yeah.
Right.
Somebody
so
who
if we have 6,
like leading, right.
Exactly. They're leading, they're helping, but they're not the leader, right? They're the guide. Mm-hmm. So for each of the hills that are important for the success of the business, we're naming 2 Sherpas. So to climb the hill. Mm-hmm. So if we're redefining the product of this airline for greater safety, we're putting the head of marketing and the head of in-flight experience. We're putting both of those as the co-leads, as co-Sherpas. The first thing we're thinking about is if we just gave it to the people who are responsible for in-flight, they would have ideas that would have been born only from that area. Now we're bringing marketing, which is going to bring all the customer data in, but they're co-leading the initiative, right? So the idea of thinking beyond org charts and starting to think about transformative work, start thinking about transformative work, and then organizing teams of people around transformative work that has nothing to do with org charts and doesn't even have to do with companies. I put this company in touch with, so this is one of the largest airlines in the world. I put them in touch with the head of customer experience at Nike. Mm-hmm. And the woman who runs customer experience at Nike is joining their team to think about how to create a retail experience, because Nike's recreating the retail experience. How do they create a retail experience? And now all of a sudden, you've got a team that is unbounded even by your company. Now, when it comes to execution, when it comes to making change happen, you might think, how does such a big team get stuff done? Well, the benefit is this. While at the beginning, it takes a little bit more time because you've got to extract all of the ideas from different people. As you begin to execute, everybody is lined up perfectly in alignment. And execution is flawless and quick. In the old days with collaboration, you would figure out what you think the answer is. Mm-hmm. Then you'd go invite somebody in to get input. And a lot of people called it buy-in. You know, buy-in?
Yes. Very English phrase. Yeah.
Yes. But it means I'm going to sell you something. Right. I want you to buy into my idea.
Okay.
But I don't want you to buy into my idea. I want us to co-create. We're going to create together. When we create together, we co-own. We both own. And as a result, we can move faster to execution. The final point of co-elevation that collaboration does not have is a commitment to each other. Now, you mentioned my first book, Never Eat Alone. Never Eat Alone was a book about networking. It taught people not to scratch each other's back, as you suggested. It taught people how to develop authentic, caring relationships that advanced both parties. You take Never Eat Alone and bring it into the leadership space, and what you end up with is leading without authority. What you end up with is realizing that all of the major consulting firms, Deloitte, McKinsey, Accenture, have all identified that work happens in networks today. We work in networks. The way that the work happens is intermeshed across the company. So Adam Grant, a professor at Wharton Business School, has been studying this with the president and chief operating officer of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg. They wrote a book together. And when he read Leading Without Authority, he said, Keith, this is the first book that gives us a roadmap for working in a networked company, in a networked world. So leadership has become, how do you work in networks when you don't have all of the authority and the power to get things done? Now, the work that I've been doing in Russia has been interesting for me because it is a traditionally authoritative leadership mindset. Traditionally, I'm not suggesting it's everybody, but certainly the clients that I've had in Russia had the leader at the top and then a group of people underneath them getting things done. And traditionally,
businesses are working like that. 90% of businesses still,
I would agree. And what we did is make the leader understand to really exceed in their performance. They've got to step off of the podium and work amongst a group of people, but get the people to step up, because this group of people have to coach each other, give each other feedback, speak truth in the room, right? If every person in your team just listens to you, you're not getting the most out of your team. You're not getting the kind of breakthrough thinking, challenging thinking. Today, this particular company I'm thinking of, which is a finance company, the leader says that this work, this commitment to co-elevation, has led him to have 30% more time than he had previously because his team has stepped up to co-elevate with each other. They turn to each other for ideas, not just to him. They go outside of the organization and find creativity and ideas, and they bring it back. They're proactive. And with this perspective, they were a $2 billion firm. They're now on their way to a $10 billion firm over 3 years. And they have not skipped a beat in the downturn. They've been able to keep this up in the downturn and find new investment opportunities and continue to stay strong through the pandemic.
It's interesting, but still, if I play this devil's advocate role, that you have to have on your side a leader, right? You cannot, for example, if you're part of this structure, corporate structure as it is all over the world now, and if you want to co-elevate, then it might be perceived that you are stepping out of your protocol. And
so I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I was working with a company called Dun & Bradstreet. It's an American company. It's an information company. And Dun & Bradstreet needed to redefine its product. Its product was 100 years old, literally. And it was designed of data. It was designed of technology. It was designed of it was data, technology, and information. And they were all 3 different divisions. And traditionally, they were able to be very successful going to market with 3 different divisions. Well, what ended up happening was new technology products started to arise that were offering each of their solutions for free. the business model, it was different. They were giving away the solution. They were giving away the data, right? They were giving away the information. And Dun & Bradstreet was starting to lose share. But what had to happen was they needed to redesign, because they were the only company that had all three. They needed to redesign a product that brought all three together in a very powerful way to the customers, not single products, but a singular interdependent product. And the silos were so deep that everybody wanted to control their own space. So it was the head of HR that had nothing to do with product design that decided to be the co-elevator, the leader without authority. So the head of HR went to the one individual that he thought had the most vision and the most humility, and went to that individual and said, you know, we really have to redesign this company. And the way that we should do it is it should start with your area, but ultimately it has to be interdependent with everybody else's. Mm-hmm. And the two of them started to design meetings that would start to think about this. Now, the power of this was that it was a person who led with empathy, with concern, with thoughtfulness, and who invited the first team member on board. And then they got the second team member on board. In that particular instance, the third team member held out for a very long time and ended up getting fired. Because the point was that once you get a mass of individuals committed, people cannot act as independent agents. It starts to become very clear that they're being self-serving and that they're not serving the greater good. So in this particular situation, they were able to grow their share price by 20%. They went private from their pre-existing strategy. They gained market share. And the person who was the tipping point that made it all happen was not any of those individuals. It was the head of HR. So there's a chapter in the book that says that you have to earn permission to lead. So what you're talking about as devil's advocate a moment ago was that an individual, chapter 3, earn permission to lead, that an individual who doesn't have a leader that sees the vision, what that person needs to do is just work harder to earn permission to lead through a relationship. And there's a reason why the person who wrote the best networking relationship book in the world is now writing leadership books. Mm-hmm. Because it's an evolution of the same set of principles.
But behavioral change, what is needed, right? It's behavioral change. So it's first understanding of the value of cultivation. Then you have to change your behavior. Leaders must change their behavior. Yes. Leaders and people must get new skills and new behaviors. And we know that get a new behavior is very, very difficult. Those who are married and those who have friends, and we tried that for years, and it's easy to say, but very, very hard to do. So what are the answers?
Well, people change. People change for each other more than they change for themselves. The 70,000 years ago, we as a species, the human species, were born into tribes. Being in a tribe is very powerful. There are times in our history where we were able to do extraordinary things because of a commitment to a tribe. The Russian tribe. And the problem in business today is that people don't have that commitment to each other. And when you want to change somebody's behavior, you're pointing fingers to change an individual. What we have found is that in companies, if we can create the tribe, if we can create the collectivism, if we can create the team, the bond, the commitment, then people will change to stay a part of that commitment. Just like I mentioned at that example, there was these first two individuals formed a bond and a commitment to take a hill, to do something powerful. In the armies, soldiers, they're bonded as a battalion, as a group, and they will risk their lives for each other, right? But they have to have that bonding at the beginning. That bonding doesn't exist in most organizations. It doesn't exist even in most families. The divorce rate where I'm from is extraordinarily high. Remember, I wrote a book in between my two books. It's the blue book back there called Who's Got Your Back?
Who's Got Your Back? Yeah, I've read it. Very good book. Yeah.
And I wrote it. It was long. It wasn't as fun to read as Never Eat Alone. But what I learned when I wrote that book was very powerful, which is how powerful a small group of people are to helping change each other, if that group of people is deeply committed to each other. So taking that idea, I teach every individual how to create that kind of bond within a loose federation of individuals that move into a committed team that then do change each other's behaviors. I actually think that people will change behaviors for a committed group of their peers more than they would change it for themselves. Take a look at New Year's resolutions. We all have New Year's resolutions. I'm going to drink less. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do yoga, whatever.
Never works.
We do it ourselves and it doesn't work. But if you make that commitment with a partner and you agree that once a week you're both going to show up and you're going to do the yoga class, you're going to do the whatever, the sustainability of that behavior change is much longer. And so I do believe that people will change, but only for each other if you create the bond first. And that's the principle of co-elevation. I'll give you another example. A very large financial services company in the United States is called Merrill Lynch. And Merrill Lynch was flat in terms of growing new accounts. It was big. It was $50 billion every year. New accounts. $50 billion of new accounts. But it was flat for 5 years. And the example is told in this book that we organized the financial advisors into small groups, committed to each other and committed to sharing information, giving each other coaching. And we were able to raise the net new accounts by 50% over 2 years. $75 billion in net new accounts from 50. And it's the same principle that I brought to the real estate company in your region. The sales reps committed to each other's success. They committed to sharing best practices. They committed to moving each other forward. And then what we're now doing is helping companies imagine, what if your customers were a part of your team?
Right.
What if the customers you're selling to, you invited them in to help you create the new business?
That's absolutely, I think, I love the idea, because it's not really your company, your team, but you're talking about wider area. It's your customers, because without your customers, your team is good to nothing.
Exactly. So they are on your team, but right now we think of them as somebody we're selling something to. Who wants to be sold to? Let's co-create a new vision together. Let's co-create a new vision together, and let's serve each other. That's the principle of co-elevation.
Yes, wonderful. Do you think that some other cultures are more kind of responsive to this than others? For example, in the Western culture, there is, individualistic culture, success, individual success. Whereas if you look at, Japanese keiretsu, kaibatsu, zaibatsu, etc., etc., they're more kind of prone to have this cooperative spirit and this co-elevation spirit, maybe.
Yeah, there are elements of a co-elevating team that are very Eastern And you could certainly look at the tribes of the Middle East and how powerful, they stay together, and how important relationship is. However, to get a team to be extraordinary, there are some other elements like the courage of speaking truth and candor.
Right. Yeah, which is missing in
which is missing in some of those, right? So we need to add the collectivism, the force of the tribe, with the courage of challenge. And it is, I think, across the board, it's a new philosophy for most corporations. Now, it's not a new philosophy for athletic teams. Mm-hmm. Athletic teams do this. They coach each other in the locker room, right? They don't need the external coach. The commitment to winning and then to each other is strong. We've seen all of the movies where, a team is fighting with each other and they're losing, and something happens. One of the members of the team gets in an accident and they all bond together or whatever it is, right? And then all of a sudden they start winning, but they start winning because they're a team. The philosophy has been there and in front of us for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. The military has this. The commitment of a team to each other, a group of troops to each other is very strong. So we've studied the existence of this and its ability to make people do extraordinary things. So now we need to be able to bring that into the world of work and transformation.
I think it's very true what you're saying, and I think that's really the future probably lays in this co-elevation thing. But at the same time, when you say, let's say, you bring an example of military, and military perceived as the most conservative institution ever. If to have, let's say, to challenge your general, try it, speak openly, hard. The whole system prevents you to do that. So
yes and no. There's a general in the United States called General McChrystal, Stanley McChrystal. Mm-hmm. And he's written a lot of books about teams. He's a friend of mine, and I just was on his show recently. We were talking about this. And if you look at how the troops themselves at the bottom are organized, mm-hmm. their commitment is very strong, right? And there is a protocol in the military, in the United States at least. There's a protocol to speak truth to power. And it's permission to speak candidly, sir. Uh-huh. And there's words that you use that ask permission to speak the truth. And the integrity is important in military, such that if you see some opportunity to challenge that would help the mission, you're allowed to speak it. But if it's not accepted, then you have to step back in the troops and do your job. And that's fine. But the permission to challenge is there. Let me add something else. I want to make sure we get to this point before we run out of time. We are now working in a remote world, not physical world. And a lot of people ask, how is it easy or not easy to do everything I'm talking about in a remote world? Here's what we have found. First of all, in 2015, my research institute raised $2 million. And we created a study, and we published 18 research projects in the Harvard Business Review on remote teams, virtual and remote teams. Mm-hmm. And today, by the way, you can tell your
that people was way before coronavirus, right?
So way before coronavirus, nobody thought about it, and frankly, very few people read my pieces. And today, they're at a website called virtualteamswin.com. I put everything there, virtualteamswin.com. And when the coronavirus hit, everybody found my pieces. And Zoom, which is what we're on now, named me the leading thought leader of remote and virtual teams. And we have been studying how teams are working remotely. And here's the challenge I give your audience. If you try to make remote work as good as physical work, you will fail. But if you make remote work better than physical work, you'll succeed. I'll give you a for instance. When I say we should team out, if I had asked you in the olden days to show up at one of my meetings, that would have cost me a lot of money, and you might not have done it because it's all over, you'd have to fly 3 days out of your time, etc. Now to ask you to show up to one of my meetings, it's 10 minutes of conversation. If I were to want to get my team to be truthful and candid, I can have a room. Here's what we've done. We took 1,000 leaders of a company the other day, and we asked them, what are the greatest risks that are going to stop us from being successful in 2021? And we broke the entire group of 1,000 into rooms of 4 by the snap of a fingers in Zoom rooms. We put them in rooms of 4. All of them had a Google Doc open. And their team was given a number, and then they were writing in the breakout, what were the risks? And then we came back into the main room. We didn't even have a report out because we had it all in the Google Doc. And we said, we're going to reconvene tomorrow. And in that period of time, we had our analysts reading all of the insights, extracting the risks, organizing them. We came back the next day as a leadership team with the 1,000, and we reported to them that we identified 5 major risks that we wouldn't have found otherwise. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to design projects to focus on those risks. We could have never done that in a physical world. So we created a new product called a remote reboot. Remote reboot, like rebooting, pushing reboot. Right. And remote reboot is a very simple 3-hour meeting that helps a team rethink how to use all of the tools of being remote to make them better than they were before. We coach teams to a co-elevating team has 8 attributes of high performance. Candor is high. It feeds each other's energy. It feeds each other's relationships. It uses their time for collaborative problem solving, not doing report outs. It gives each other feedback and coaching. So we have these 8 elements. We've designed staff meetings and new meetings in a remote world, right? In a remote world, we think you can be a better team than you ever were before. And we're now able to do that all over the world. We can do that all over the world and coach a team how to be a better team than it ever was before in a co-elevating fashion. This is a business we created in the last 3 months.
Interesting. So you probably have a lot of work now, probably more than before.
We are having our original work that we had coming into the year, we always serve the largest corporations in the world, General Motors, Verizon, the World Bank, right? That's what we've been. And then I speak and I write books, etc. But today we're serving a Russian real estate company, right? It's a $20-30 million company that one of my coaches gets up at 5 a.m. and does the coaching for a Russian real estate company. We could have never done that before, right? So now we're hiring new coaches. We've created new methodologies. I've now created a course that I never had before. I have a new online course teaching leaders and team leaders. It's 12 modules. And we're selling it for $1,000. I used to charge $500,000 to work with a team. And now I'm teaching leaders to be their own co-elevating leaders for $1,000. I could never do that before. Now, it's not easy, right? We haven't just snapped our fingers and had, crazy success. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last months. It's been, I've been awake at nights. I've stressed on this, but the team is what's creating this possibility. And I'm very proud of the team. And I think we will definitely be a better company for 2021. Part of what we're doing next weekend, I'm meeting with some technologists. Every one of us needs to ask ourselves, while we're being disrupted, while the walls of our houses are blown away, right? What are we going to rebuild? And I think it's time to rebuild our houses, our businesses, for 10 years from now, not for yesterday. We have to commit to looking forward and building a better, more fortified, more advanced, more technologically successful company for the future while we're in this rubble and disruption. And it will take a co-elevating team to do that. And as I say, don't go back to work. Go forward to work. That's the power and the importance of the time we're in today.
Oh, Keith, I think if I wouldn't know you and I wouldn't see you now, I would imagine a hairy or bald man who is 100+ years old saying exactly the same thing. I think you are really very bright mind. I mean, I don't want to, to give you compliments, but it's remarkable, because I think what you are saying, it's really future of work. Yep. It's a future which we have to grasp, or we just go really bust and go out of business. And I think, of course, it's not easy. Of course, it's difficult, but this is the only way forward.
It's the only way forward. The future of work is in our. The future of work is in our. The future of work is in our hands today, but it's a choice.
Yes, it's a choice. I have a lot of other questions, but I don't want to kind of to spoil this aura of one particular really main thought, which you so brilliantly gave today. And I want to stay with that. And in fact, I even kind of feel with regret, I want to finish that interview, because I want my listeners and viewers really to get just that idea of co-elevation, which actually kind of includes a lot of other ideas which people can implement in order to really to make a new life, a new business, and much more happier business, because co-elevation presumes that people really realize their full potential, not just taking orders and doing things right because the boss wants it to.
Amen. Amen. Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure. And there are a lot of other resources. As I said, you can tell your people, go to virtualteamswin.com. And there's a lot of information about running remote teams there. We also created this new website called goforwardtowork.com. And there's a lot of insight about the future of work there. And, I invite anybody who's interested in learning from us to go to keithferrazzi.com. And we now have a whole set of courses. I'll tell you, there's one thing that you can give your viewers to work with your team differently. You do need to have a verbal conversation with them about a new way of working. Mm-hmm. And we call that recontracting. The contract you have with your team today is that I will sit in the room and listen to the leader and do what he says, right? The contract we need to have is I will step up and collaborate with my peers and commit to coaching each other, giving each other ideas, and taking us all to a higher level, right? That's a different contract. And so we call this recontracting. And if you want, we have a guide on how a leader can have this conversation to recontract. And we'll give you the link. It's I think it's actually Ferrazzi Learning, I think.
Keith, when we finish this interview, I would put it on a pause and then I put it down. So to
that'd
put
be
it
great.
in writing, you know.
Yeah. I think it's ferrazzilearning.com/recontract. And we'll give you the links, but there's 3 links, and I want to be able to serve you. You're always so generous to everybody, and I want to make sure that we're equally generous to the people watching this.
Thank you so much, Keith. So really pleasure. It's even more than I expected, to be honest, because you really, when I listen to you, and the thing which when I read is great, but when I listen to you, I feel this energy, and even through Zoom. I mean, obviously you're more powerful when you speak live, but even through Zoom, I think I didn't miss much. I mean, I think I got the message, and my people got the message, and it's really, really wonderful. And thank you so much. And I think after listening to you, I think the future is bright, and future is just beginning. It's not just the end of mankind and end of learning. No, it's a beginning of learning. It's a new wave of positivity, I hope. Well, thank you very much, Keith.